A year and a half ago, you and I drove a four-cylinder convertible on a track in Palm Springs, and it knocked our socks off so much. We ended up doing a mini-series of sorts, even though that wasn't the plan originally. Then we got on a plane, flew to a track in South Carolina, drove the same car with a six-cylinder engine. That one was much better, but far too expensive. Then for World Car, we drove sort of the same car with a slightly less powerful six-cylinder engine, but most importantly, it had a different carrying case, one with a roof. That was good, but still needed a little bit of work. Then recently we drove the updated version of that car, one with the proper amount of power coming out of that six-cylinder engine, and it was much better, but still the money was too challenging. Now our mini-series comes full circle. We go back to the original four-cylinder engine in the second carrying case, but this one costs a couple of shekels less. Let's you and I start at the beginning, which would mean this is analogous to a Z4 S30i. That translates to a 2-liter, four-cylinder gasoline direct-injected turbocharged engine, good for 255 horsepower, that comes in at 5,000 RPM, stays flat all the way to 6,500 RPM. Then there's the torque, which is very respectable when you consider this is only four cylinders, 295 pound-feet, comes in at 1,550 RPM, stays flat all the way up to 4,400 RPM. That drives only the rear wheels, vielen dank, or I should say, arigato gozaimasu, through anything you want, as long as it's an 8-speed torque converter automatic. This is the same transmission we've driven in many BMWs, whether they be 4s, 6s, or 8s, and has proven to be a fantastic transmission. Then there are some performance and EPA figures we do need to cover. VMAX, that does not change from the 2021 Supra we just drove. They are both electronically limited to 155 miles an hour. 0 to 60 does change pretty considerably. A refresher, the six-cylinder Supra, the one with the higher horsepower that we drove, that is 3.9 seconds to 60. This is 5 seconds to 60. Then there are the US EPA figures, but first, another refresher on that 3-liter 2021 Supra we just drove. 22, 30, 25 combined. This 2-liter four-cylinder Supra, 25, 32, 28 combined. Rather important piece of additional information. This weighs 219 pounds less than a six-cylinder Supra. With that, slight delay there, but wow, it does wake up, and wow, this is really good. But then again, I really am not surprised, because remember when we had this engine in the Z4 on the track, it was really good. That goodness has transferred here. The delivery of power is unusually good. I'd say about 2,500 RPM and above, stays flat. Even into 4,000 and 5,000 RPM, there's still a good amount of pulling power. I really would not be doing my job correctly if I didn't share that there is a lovely sound that comes out of this thing. There's a little burble when you try to downshift here, to the point that it pushes you to change the gears manually more than you should, which will drop an atomic bomb on the better fuel economy that we discussed of the four-cylinder. Now, putting all that aside in terms of how it delivers power in two less cylinders, the biggest thing I notice, less weight in the nose, and that is an unusually good thing. You and I have covered in many episodes what underpins a current gen Z4 or a Supra, so really not going to spend any time here focusing on McPherson struts in the front or multi-link in the rear. Rather, we need to focus on what are the differences underneath this thing beside the engine. Well, the biggest being no active diff in the rear, no additional bracing underneath the hood, and most importantly, no adjustable dampers. The wheels change as well. They're a bit smaller at 18 inches all the way around. The brakes, they're also a bit smaller, 13-inch diameter rotors all the way around. And while we're talking about the brakes, the front rotors, they're no longer 4-piston calipers, 1-piston caliper. You do notice a little bit less stopping power here. Doesn't mean the brakes are less usable, and the pedal modulation is still very good. So yes, there is still a sport button here, but further to the conversation we just had in the hangar, it only changes the throttle mapping, the steering mapping, and the transmission mapping, which means there was a huge discussion, I would say probably an argument inside of Toyota and BMW, in how do you set up the suspension? Do you err on the side of caution, and do you do more compliance, better ride quality, or do you dial it in, make it stiffer, less compliance, less ride quality, and make it go around corners better? And I am very happy to report that it goes around corners better, but there isn't a huge degradation in the ride quality, which is kind of the same thing we learned in the 3.0 version of the Z4. Now, getting more technical on you, yes, there's really good control over all planes of motion, but more importantly, this is kind of a unicorn in today's day and age of sports cars, because at 3,181 pounds, that is a bona fide lightweight sports car in today's day and age. So that, combined with the stiffer setup of the standard suspension, this is good. It's way better than I thought it would be. Yes, it is indeed that time again to play your favorite game of mine, the options game, with today's contestant, yet another Toyota Supra. This one, the 2021 Toyota Supra 2.0, translated to us common folk, that means a 4-cylinder engine, but most importantly, it means less money, a lot less money. Base price, $42,990. As a point of comparison, the most basic 6-cylinder on offer is $8,000 more. Then there is the color. And here is where we run into a problem. I am one of the few people that feels these are very attractive cars. Toyota really knocked it out of the park with the design on this. So why hide it with black, especially when there are lovely colors on offer? There is a red on offer. There is a blue on offer. However, the blue, I believe, is only on offer in the 6-cylinder. And then there is something called nitro yellow. And believe it or not, this is one of the few cars I probably would go with the yellow. Yes, it costs an additional $425. This one, they did not spend that money. But the real crime is the interior, because it's anything you want as long as it's black. And if you've been looking in that interior for this entire episode, it's a bit BMW, meaning there's nothing interesting going on in there. So why not, put some contrast, make it pop with some color? How about tan or light gray? Or if you really want to make it a sports car, how about a red interior or something that has colored seat belts? Let's pick up the design in the interior, please. Anyway, let's press on to the options, of which there are only one on offer. This one is a package, includes a lot of safety doodads, dynamic radar cruise control, blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, and then most importantly, the JBL stereo. Then the screen changes. So the screen on these things, standard is an 8-inch. However, this one has an 8.8-inch screen because it has navigation and wireless Apple CarPlay as part of this package. Anyway, this package is $3,485. To that, the only other thing we add is the destination and handling for $995. It comes from Austria. Then that brings us to a total retail price of $47,895. Something you and I do not discuss a lot, that is weight distribution. Toyota makes a huge stink about this being a perfect 50-50, whether it's the 6 or the 4. So I got underneath the car and I can see why they make a huge stink. Yeah, there is a shorter engine in the front of this vehicle, we understand that. But the gas tank, it's literally right here. It's right behind me. And then the battery, which is like a boat anchor, it almost is like a diesel battery in size, that sits in the tire well where you normally would have a spare tire. And I think the combination of all that does contribute to the 50-50 weight distribution. That, combined with less weight in the nose, this is the more tossable, fun choice. Right about now, I can't help but thinking that it's the sweet spot of the current generation of Toyota Supra. And no, I don't say that just because of the money. I say that because it's a significantly more competitive offering, and that's because it's one of the most balanced sports cars one can drive today. Think about what we learned. Great torque coming out of the engine, and in the grand scheme of the sports car world, this is now kind of a lightweight car. But then there's the money, and that's two things. Number one, it is significantly cheaper than a Corvette. To me, the 6-cylinder is just too close to the price of the Corvette. And then number two, for some reason, most people that think of these, they think that sports cars back in the day were so much cheaper. So let's talk about that. A 240Z, when they were new, they were about $3,800. In $2020, that's a shade under $26,000. So at $43,000, that's quite a premium, but it also has a lot more stuff going for it. Obviously more power, more safety doodads, and it's more luxurious on the inside. So with that, I am going to make a suggestion to the folks at Toyota. How about we scrap that $3,500 package, make the stereo standard, and then I don't even really care about wireless Apple CarPlay. How about just regular Apple CarPlay, and then please, oh please, oh please, some color choices on the interior, maybe a glass roof, and then I'll save you a couple of bucks. How about a manual transmission? That would be an offering incredibly hard to beat. Think I'm crazy? Well, for the first time ever on the show, I'm going to give you a second opinion on the exact same car. Remember our good friend Brian Max, the Canadian race car driver that stood in for me while I was in the hospital? Well, he was here in California shooting episodes for his show while this was here in the hangar. I gave him this car. He shot his own episode on this car, which premiered today as well. So click on this link above and you can see Brian's take on the 2-liter Supra.